Hi, innovators. My name is Titanium and we're going to be taking our physics today. Let's look into motion. Motion is the visible movement between 2 points, that is, you moving from point A to point B. For example, let's take a look at this family over here. They are undergoing motion or a moving snail, even though the movement is actually very slow, but as far as it is changing its position from its initial place to a final place, we call that motion. So motion is of two kinds. We have kinematics and we have dynamics. I'm going to explain it for you. Kinematics is just the study of motion without minding the kind of force causing the motion, while dynamics is the study of motion with reference to what is causing that motion, whether it's a pull or a push or a tension or a force field. So moving on, there are different types of motion. There is random motion. In this type of motion, you have no specific direction. You're just moving in any place the force acting on you takes you to. Another name for this motion is called the Brownian motion. Next one is transitional motion. This is also known as a linear motion because you're just moving in a straight path from point A to point B. An example of this kind of motion is a moving car on a straight road. Next one is the oscillatory motion. This is also known as a periodic motion or a vibratory motion. In this kind of motion, a rhythmic movement or a to and fro movement is observed. For example, the simple pendulum, like this one over here. The movement is always constant. That is, once it's moving from this direction to this path, it's also going back in the same path from that direction to the same direction back. So it's a to and fro movement. Next one is the rotational motion. In this kind of motion, the axis of rotation changes. Yeah, for example, is this windmill over here. Yes. The next one is the circulatory motion. People often mistake circulatory motion for rotational motion and vice versa. It's actually different. In circulatory motion, the axis of rotation doesn't change. That is, the path by which the object is rotating doesn't change, it doesn't move, it's always constant, it's always fixed in its orbit. An example of this circulatory motion is the planets that we have in the solar system moving around the sun. If you could see it here, they are not changing their direction. Each planet have their own orbits by which they rotate around the sun, so it doesn't change. The axis of rotation is fixed. So that's all we need to know about motion, the branches of motion and the types of motion. Follow for part 2 where we check out the laws of motion. These laws of motion was actually proposed by a scientist which is known as Isaac Newton. So now, trivia time. So I mentioned that Sir Isaac Newton proposed the laws of motion, right? So now my question to you guys is, how many laws of motion did Sir Isaac Newton propose? Your answer should be in the comment section, and the first person to get it is going to be acknowledged in motion part 2. As usual, don't forget to like and follow, don't forget to give a love reaction, and feel free to drop your comments.